This child was born only as big as an egg, and even when he grew up, he was not as big as one of his father's fingers. However, this tiny child was actually the biological son of a 10-meter-tall giant king, but he had been deaf and mute since birth, so weak that he could be crushed to death with just one finger. Even ordinary civilians dared to mock him as a fool without any scruples, because this was already the third time he had been robbed until he was left with only his underwear. Everyone looked down on him, yet he was determined to become the greatest king in the world and dreamed of becoming a giant even more powerful than his father. One day, Prince Baji went out to play and accidentally ran into Kage, who was wearing an eye patch, stealing money. This startled him just as he was about to run away. Kage stopped him. Kage curiously asked Baji who he was, but Baji could only make sounds and couldn't speak. Only then did Kage realize that Baji was deaf and mute. Strangely, although they were of two different species, they could communicate naturally. Kage threatened Baji with a knife to hand over money. If he had no money, he had to take off his clothes to pay. The simple-minded Baji foolishly took off all his clothes, leaving only a pair of small pants to cover himself. Kage was even more excessive and ordered him to come with some expensive clothes the next day. Baji immediately nodded and then went home in a daze. When the common people on the street saw Baji being robbed until he was left with only his underwear, they all whispered and laughed at him. Even children only a few years old dared to bully him, but Baji had a big smile on his face. Because Kage was the only one who could communicate with him normally, he naively thought that he had made a friend. Every time he wore his most gorgeous clothes to meet Kage. He was so stupid that Kage even felt a bit reluctant. Kage became interested in this extremely stupid person and secretly followed him. Seeing Baji being laughed at, he felt a little guilty. It was only when Baji walked into the palace that Kage realized he was actually a prince. Seeing Baji being scolded by his stepmother, saying that he was always naked and had shamed the royal family and didn't deserve to be king at all, Kage began to feel sorry for the deaf-mute child. He followed Baji all the way to the dressing room and saw him secretly crying alone. But soon, Baji dried his tears and put on a happy smile again.